I witnessed terrifying live streams where viewers disappeared into the dark abyss. I never should have opened that door. The moment my fingers brushed the cool metal knob, an unsettling chill wound its way down my spine. It felt wrong, unnatural, like stepping into a shadowy pit that whispered secrets best left untold. I was just sitting in my room, scrolling through yet another late-night video. Just another Friday or so, I thought. My comforter, soft and familiar, wrapped around me like a warm cocoon. But the live stream started to unravel that peace. Darkness consumed the screen as it flickered to life. I could almost smell the damp earth and decay. My heart raced at the unsettling sight of the stream's host, a gaunt figure with wild hair, eyes wide with manic energy. "Join me," he beckoned, his voice a low, hushed hiss. I leaned in closer, a sick mix of curiosity and dread coiling in my gut. Suddenly, viewers began to vanish one by one. Comments flew across the screen like frantic fireflies, each name fading as if swallowed by the abyss he promised. "Where did they go?" I typed, my fingers trembling on the keyboard. No answer, just a growing sense of urgency. The shadows behind the host deepened, alive with whispers I couldn't quite make out, but they carried a weight, a gravity that pulled at me. A soft rustle caught my ear, too faint to pinpoint, but sharp enough to send my pulse racing. I felt the air grow colder, pricking my skin. My room dimmed. I glanced over my shoulder, the shadows creeping closer, flickering like old film reels. And there it was again, the rustle, like a breath behind me. My heart pounded. I could feel the tension build, like a wave about to crash, tumultuous and heavy. Objects in my room shifted in my peripheral vision, but when I turned, nothing was there. The host leaned closer to the camera, his smile stretching too wide. "Join us," he whispered, and my screen flickered violently as the lights seemed to dim in sync with my dread. My fingers hovered over the keys, a lump forming in my throat. I should have clicked away. I should have run. But instead, I sat frozen, entranced by the horror unfolding before me. The live stream continued, a siren song luring me deeper into its dark embrace. The final comment taunted me. "You could be next," I gasped, an icy hand clutching at my heart. Was that my name I heard being whispered from the screen? Then the lights flickered one last time, shadows danced along the walls, and just as I reached for the mouse to click out, the door behind me creaked open slowly. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The door creaked open, and a wave of frigid air washed over me, revealing only a pitch-black corridor beyond. My breath hitched as the shadows poured through the gap, snaking into my space as if eager to mingle with the light that battled to stay alive in the room. I knew the door had been securely locked. A lingering unease coiled in my stomach. How could this be happening? With my heart thundering against my ribcage, I turned my focus back to the screen. The host flickered, his eyes now seeming to bore into my very soul. "You should have stayed away," he hissed, and the screen warped an undulating mass of darkness and despair. A surge of panic shot through me, and I instinctively reached for my phone, desperate to capture the chilling moment, but my fingers fumbled. The device slipped through my grasp and clattered to the floor. Smothered in darkness with shaking hands, I pulled myself upright, straining to peer into the inky blackness past the open door. Each inch I approached felt like treading deeper into unknown terror. My pulse rang in my ears, a frantic drum echoing caution against the silence. I forced a swallow, my throat dry and constricted. Was there someone waiting for me? Someone ready to drag me into the calamitous void I've been so desperately warned about? Behind me, the stream continued, each moment stretching into an agonizing eternity. The host's smile contorted, his face a grotesque mask of glee that contradicted the horror lurking in the shadows. "They all join in the end," he said softly, his words running like a venomous slither up my spine. Did he mean the viewers? Or me? I finally tore my focus away from the screen, shaking my head to dispel the dark whispers growing around me. I had to get out away from both the stream and whatever was lurking just beyond the door. But as I turned to leave, the shadows coalesced, forming dark shapes that writhed and pulsed. Twisting into what seemed like grasping hands, I stumbled back, but the retreat left me closer to the screen. It was now a portal to something malevolent, every pixel breathing sinister intent. I spotted the comments swirling, heavier, with an urgency undeniable, each name fading as the stream consumed more souls. "Help me," someone typed. "I can't get out." The last echoes of voices flickered before disappearing, each whispered plea hammering nails into my heart. Suddenly, a guttural sound emanated from the hallway, a throaty chuckle, rich and cruel. I shivered. The sound crawled across my skin like 1,000 icy fingers. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but the darkness around me seemed to conspire to keep me tethered to the spot, merging with the vortex of terror unfolding in the live stream. Feeling a compulsion stronger than fear, I inched toward the threshold, peering into the corridor's malevolence. "Join us?" the host cried, the words distorted and echoing with a resonance that felt all too real. The fear in my heart began to split, torn between the insatiable thirst for a way out and the brooding call of the abyss. My breath escaped in ragged gasps. Forcing myself to look away, I snatched my phone from the ground, fumbled to unlock it, and aimed the camera back toward the door, hoping to capture whatever lay beyond. But as the light from my screen flickered on, illuminating the darkness just ahead, I found myself staring not at emptiness but at a figure, the unmistakable silhouette of a person standing silently, watching, waiting. Fear solidified in my chest, and yet something pulled at me, urging me forward. "They want you," the figure mouthed, its voice a dry, echoing whisper that slithered through my brain. "Join us." The live stream flickered again, the host's figure morphing into a grotesque amalgamation of faces, each one contorted in pain and terror. One looked eerily like me. In that frantic instant of horror, the screen wavered, and the host's eyes, now glimmering with unnatural brilliance, locked onto mine. My heart stopped. "Soon," he whispered. "Soon you will understand." And just like that, the room plunged into complete darkness as the door swung shut, trapping me within the folds of despair. The echoes of the live stream whispering one chilling command: "Embrace the void." The walls of the room pulsed like a living entity. The air thickened with dread as the suffocating silence enveloped me. Heart racing, I staggered back, feeling the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on me. The darkness that had devoured the light fought back with dark tendrils that coiled around my throat, choking any remnants of courage. "Join us," the voice lingered in my mind, haunting me with its promise of belonging. I shook my head violently, desperate to shake off the allure that beckoned from beyond the veil. Each heartbeat felt like a thunderous warning, urging me to escape this claustrophobic nightmare. But from within the enveloping shadows came a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails scraping against the wood. The sound crescendoed, echoing against the walls as if mocking my terror. I wanted to scream, but the words choked in my throat, trapped beneath the flood of panic, a prisoner in my own body. I took a shaky step backward, pushing against the world of shadows that threatened to swallow me whole. That's when the screen flickered alive again, casting jittery light across the room and illuminating the darkness around me like a flashlight piercing the night. The host's visage was now grotesque, a remorseless grin stretching far too wide. "You think you can escape?" he taunted, his voice slithering into every corner of my mind. Glancing nervously at the door, I felt the cold hands of hopelessness tighten around my chest. The figure, now barely visible, still loomed in the doorway, motionless, yet I could sense its breath hitching, waiting like a predator in the shadows. My resolve began to crack. Maybe I had been foolish to think I could comprehend this nightmare while ignoring the reality closing in around me. The comments filled the live stream once more, a cacophony of pleas and whispers frantically scrolling beneath the distorted visage of the host. "Help us!" One shuddering voice cried out, broken and jagged. "We can't leave." My heart sank deeper, realizing that with every desperate plea, a flicker of light vanished from the viewer count. "Look at what you could become," the host said, his voice morphing, reverberating through the walls, saturating the air with enticement thick enough to choke. "You are not alone, just look at that moment." The live stream cascaded, shifting from the nightmarish images of viewers into clips of their past joys and sufferings. Each moment seemingly tangible yet twisted beyond recognition, a haunting reel of life. I turned away, overwhelmed by sorrow, but when I faced the room again, the figure stood much closer, now fully illuminated by the eerie glow of the screen. I could see the desperation etched in its features, the frantic eyes wide with fear and longing. "Help us," it whispered, but as its mouth moved, I felt an unsettling chill creeping over my body, a paralyzing realization. Whatever was trapped inside was not human anymore. The sound of the live stream warped again, a jarring distortion as it continually looped, "Join us! Join us!" echoing like a dirge for the lost. The walls vibrated with the chant, reverberating within me until I felt my own heart struggling to sustain its rhythm against the call of the abyss. Fear fueled a primal instinct within me to bolt, but as I turned, the door had vanished. In its place was an impenetrable darkness, a barricade mumbling sinister secrets. I pressed against the solid surface, panic flooding my bloodstream. Desperation clawed at my throat, and I felt as if the shadows were tightening around me, feeding on my despair. Just then, cracking laughter bubbled up through the streaming chaos, and I spun back to the figure. It was advancing, moving with an unnatural fluidity, as if stepping from a realm where time had no grasp. "They've taken so much," it mouthed silently, and my heart dropped in dismay. Another realization crashing over meth: others were not lost. They had transformed into something far worse. As I stumbled backward, my phone slipped from my grip. The light flickered weakly against the inky void, illuminating a face, mine, twisted in anguish, a reflection of my own terror. Every part of my reality began to warp, the room pulsing, the entity approaching, and then the horrid faces of those who were consumed danced across the screen as they reached out, screaming in silent agony, their bodies contorting as the shadows snaked around their limbs. A single thought pierced through the chaos, boiling with urgency. I needed to escape this fate. But all at once, everything roared to life, phantoms of the past filling the room, shadows swirling frantically as the figure extended a hand, phantoms chanting, "Join us." The walls began to close in, whispering words I couldn't comprehend, the chants echoing louder until my mind no longer recognized reality. And then, amid the swirling chaos, the host appeared behind me, a shadow solidified, lips curling into that deranged grin. "You were always meant to be ours," he hissed, and as I turned to confront him, the phone flickered one last time, revealing the shadows of the consumed, their faces morphing into something grotesque once more, all solidifying in a ghastly harmony that swallowed my scream. The last thing I felt was the darkness seeping into my skin, pulling me down into its depths, and I finally understood. The void didn't seek to take me. It craved me. The screen blinked once, twice, and in that moment, the laughter of the damned echoed, dragging me into unfathomable silence. The silence was all-encompassing, a thick blanket suffocating my senses as I drifted through the void. I couldn't tell how long it had been. Time felt like a cruel illusion lost in the grasp of something far older and more sinister. Every breath I tried to take was heavy with the taste of iron and ash, reminding me of all that had vanished into the dark. Then, a whisper broke the stillness, jagged and splintered. "Help us, find us." The plea slithered through my mind like a serpent, wrapping around my thoughts, tightening until I felt the crushing weight of despair. The lament echoed familiar, drawing my focus back to a memory, a name I dared not utter in this realm. Those who had vanished were reaching for me through the shadows, their voices blending into a chilling chorus. Suddenly, the darkness shifted, rippling like a disturbed pool of water. Shapes materialized in the inky black, distorted and barely recognizable. Faces of the lost, twisted with sorrow, eyes burned bright with desperate fervor. They hovered in the periphery of my vision like a protective barrier, warning me of what lurked beneath. "Find us," they murmured, their mouths moving in synchrony with the pulse of the obsidian shadows at the edges. I felt drawn to them, to their sorrow, as little flickers of light began to manifest among their tormented visages. Figures reached out, tendrils of warmth brushing against my skin, igniting a longing deep within me. But the deeper I looked, the more I saw the horror etched in their eyes, desperation giving way to torment, and I recoiled, stepping back from their grasp. No longer were they mere echoes of grief. They were hungry. I felt them reaching for my spirit, calling me to join their unholy chorus. "Join us," they harmonized, laughter mingling with cries, their voices spiraling around me, assaulting my mind in a dizzying rush. I pressed my hands against my ears, but the rhythm of their chant seeped into my very bones. "Help us," one cried out again, and the sound echoed with unbearable weight. I could feel their strength disappearing, their essence fading into the dark, and yet, I stood paralyzed, caught between fear and empathy. But in that moment of hesitation, the ground beneath me began to tremble, seismic shifts shaking the walls of this cavernous realm. The shadows coiled tighter, clinging to my legs, dragging me deeper into their abyss. I tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed, merging with the cacophony of lost souls. It was then that I glimpsed a portal tear in the fabric of darkness, a throbbing chasm swirling with muted colors, beckoning me closer. My heart raced as the urge to flee warred with the pull of their voices. What lay beyond it? Perhaps a chance for escape, or another trap set by the malevolent entities that had ensnared those before me. "Don't go," a familiar voice rang out, cutting through the haze. My gut twisted, realizing it was someone I once knew. "You don't belong here," but the words were frail compared to the pounding rhythm of fear wrapping around me. Desperately, I gathered myself and lunged toward the portal. But the shadows grasped at my ankles, a cold grip like 1,000 tiny claws snagging at my skin, threatening to pull me back. The faces of the lost twisted and morphed around me, their features shifting into grotesque parodies of pain, reaching out in futile rage. "No!" I roared, tearing myself from their grasp, launching forward into the opening. The walls trembled violently as I neared the threshold, the portal's swirling light enveloping me like a tender embrace. I felt the shadows recoil, shrieking, ripping away from my body as if I bore the very essence of their torment. I plunged through, the world distorting as an avalanche of colors crashed around me. A gasp escaped my lips as a disorienting rush swallowed me. I clung to the rush of light, fighting against the consuming darkness behind me when everything suddenly shattered, the world fracturing into shards of luminescence scattered like stars as I fell. The blinding radiance dimmed, revealing not salvation, but a familiar, twisted reflection of the one I had escaped. I staggered to my feet, heart pounding in anticipation, reality feeling thin and fragile. The Livestream screen flickered back to life. What emerged sent a paralyzing jolt through me. It was the host again, but his form flickered between worlds, an unsettling grin stretching across his face. "Oh, you're back," he chimed, the distorted laughter echoing off the walls. "We missed you, but you brought friends from the corners of the room." The figures began to emerge, transformed shadows with hollow eyes and cracked smiles, reaching out, their mouths moving, but no sound emerged. They surrounded me, an audience awaiting the next act. And then, just as the host began to speak, I felt a cold hand brush against my shoulder. A shudder gripped my spine as I turned slowly, dread pooling in my gut. A face of one long lost emerged from the shadows, and the terror of recognition flooded back. "Help us," it whispered, and I began to understand I was never meant to escape. The weight of despair pressed down on my chest, pinning me in place as the chill of that familiar touch lingered. I stood transfixed, staring into the hollow eyes of my brother, whose face was both a haunting reminder of what I had lost and an echo of a time before this nightmare. Every fiber of my being screamed to turn away, yet the pull of family, even one twisted in torment, was suffocatingly powerful. "Help us," he croaked again, his voice barely above a whisper, the once loving timbre replaced with a raspy, chilling resonance that echoed through time itself. No longer was he the brother I adored. He was an avatar of grief, a representation of my failure to save him, and his gaunt cheeks and sunken eyes mirrored the lost souls surrounding me, their features twisting grotesquely with desperation and decay. The host's laughter grew louder, vibrating through the room like a dark melody. Isn't it precious? Family bond so strong, so fragile. He leaned closer, eyes sparkling with a malevolence that sent a ripple of nausea through me. But you see, dear viewer, they can't stay without your help. You're all quite connected now. One big, dysfunctional family in the void. With a sudden move, he gestured around the room. The specters swirled closer, their faces stretching into manic grins that cracked at the corners, mouths opening, yet remaining voiceless. I could feel their sorrow and rage, a tide of anguish ready to drown me. I frantically searched for a way out, but the room felt smaller, walls heaving as if they were alive, lurching closer. Shadows writhed around the edges, pulsating as if feeding off my fear. There was nowhere to run. Why are you doing this? I sputtered, my throat tight with emotion. My brother's gaze remained locked on mine, pleading. Because this is what we are, the host answered, his smile widening impossibly. You see, there are rules to be followed here. Each time you escape, it's an invitation for more. For new viewers to blend with the darkness. He spread his arms wide, grandstanding, you're our entertainment, and they are here to remind you of the price of your free will. Stop, I shouted, but the words felt wasted in the charged air, absorbed by the shadows and the silent audience. Free will? My brother's voice echoed, now layered with the cries of others' whispers curling around my mind like smoke. You think you can choose to leave us? To turn your back on us? No. I'm trying to help. My heart raced as the darkness within the room twisted, swirling around me like a maelstrom, tugging at the edges of my sanity. You can never help us, he lamented, an eerie calm settling over his features. Look at us. Look what you've become. The shadows around him contorted into grotesque forms, morphing into images of my own failures, moments when I had turned away, when I had chosen to ignore the subtle cries for help. Did I ever really think I could escape unscathed? Their mouths opened wider, revealing fanged smiles, and a cacophony of sound pressed into my mind, each memory shouting its regrets, anger, and blame as the boundaries of my existence shattered. Fleeing became an instinctual response. I stumbled backward, attempting to distance myself from their accusations. Yet the shadows closed in, whispering promises of relief, dread, and camaraderie. Each promise a silken thread drawing me closer. Join us. They chorused, their faces flickering between horror and hope, mirroring the torment of my own despair. Suddenly, the room shifted again, as the host's laughter resonated with glee. Oh, this is my favorite part. The struggle before surrender. I felt the ground tremble beneath me, the walls collapsing inward as everything cracked and splintered. The specters released a collective roar, howling their plight. Their cries crescendoed until it felt as though my skull would burst. In that thick atmosphere of terror, a faint glimmer caught my eye. Beyond the encircling shadows lay another portal, this one pulsating with vibrant light unlike the stifling darkness that had engulfed me before. It shimmered like a distant star, a stark contrast to the chaos, beckoning with promise and hope. Without thinking, I lunged toward it, searching for a way out of this living nightmare. But the shadows erupted, clawing at me like 1,000 icy fingers, pulling me back, a desperate grip that felt sentient. Don't leave us. My brother's voice pierced through the madness, a final, echoing plea wrapped in anguish. I was nearly there, the light stretching toward me like warm arms, when sharp, twisted fear seized my heart. And in that moment of vacuuming stillness right before impact, I realized with gut-wrenching clarity that the darkness was not simply outside me. It had woven itself too deeply into my soul. The surge of light drew nearer, a beacon of salvation, but as I felt those shadows tear through the fabric of my being, I was struck with the horrifying knowledge that my escape could mean another's binding. The last thing I heard before crashing into the blinding light was a chorus of voices merging into a sinister chant, "You belong to us now." echoing in triumph as everything shattered into oblivion around me. And as the light swallowed me whole, I felt them latch onto my essence, introducing me to the relentless cycle of despair, binding me to the very darkness I once sought to escape. Then silence fell. The silence was palpable, a heavy shroud muffling the eerie laughter that had once surrounded me. I blinked against the blinding light, the sudden brightness an assault on my senses, piercing through the veil of shadows that had suffocated me moments before. But as the brilliance faded, an unsettling calm replaced it. A vacuum where chaos had thrived, I stood in a liminal space, a stretch of endless gray, neither here nor there. The ground was smooth but featureless, a surreal expanse that felt as though it could swallow me whole at any moment. The air was still, devoid of sound, but the echoes of my brother's desperate pleas reverberated in my mind. "You belong to us now." My heart raced as I scanned my surroundings. Was I truly alone? Had I escaped the clutches of that malevolent host? Or was this next phase merely part of a greater torment? I hesitated, each breath anxious and halting, tethered to the fear that the darkness was still after me, lurking beneath the surface of this ghostly mirage. And then, as if the universe had conspired to answer my unspoken question, the ground beneath my feet shivered. Ripples ran through the void, distorting the landscape and causing my pulse to thud in synchrony with the quaking. Suddenly, elongated figures emerged from the gray, their forms beginning to solidify. They were adorned in garbled garments, their faces obscured by shadows, but their eyes glowered with an insatiable hunger. More to feast upon, they whispered, the sound like a rusted gate creaking open, sending a chill spiraling down my spine. Panic surged through me, instinct screaming to run. I turned to dash back toward the light, but it had vanished, swallowed whole by the hungry abyss. I was ensnared in this new realistia theater defined by horrid curiosities, each figure looming closer, extending sinewy arms as if inviting me into their nightmarish fellowship. "Welcome to the audience," one croaked, voice grating like a broken record. "You've joined us at last." The last flicker of dismissive laughter bubbled forth from the host, now standing behind the figures, a sinister orchestration of joy and greed flickering across his features. "Ah, but dear viewer, your exit was merely a temporary reprieve." His eyes gleamed, reflecting an abyss of delight in my suffering. "Now you're part of this performance, and we all know the show must go on." The grotesque beings pressed closer, their whispers morphing into a thrumming chant that resonated through the ground and into my bones, saying my name, peeling back the layers of my soul. The harmony of their voices wove into my sense of being, wrapping around my heart, squeezing tighter with every repetition. Images flashed behind my eyes, memories of laughter and love quickly replaced by visions of suffering and calamity. Glimpses of those I had lost punctuated the invocations, each face marked by the taint of despair. "Join us," they howled, the mantra intertwining with my thoughts, each beat drumming an unrelenting weight on my chest. Desperation surged within me, igniting a fire long dormant. My will fought against the siren call, the thrust of dread pooling in an iridescent bubble deep in my gut. But as those eyes bore into me with their unyielding hunger, I felt Ida despair cloaked in familiarity, inviting me to embrace the very grief I had tried to abandon. Would yielding mean liberation or enslavement? Rage and clarity mingled with terror. I opened my mouth to scream, a visceral yell of defiance echoing across the void. "No, I will not become a part of your darkness." In that instant something shifted. The figures recoiled as if transfixed, their surfaces flickering like a malfunctioning television screen. For a moment, I had fractured the rhythm of their spell. My heartbeat pounded in rebellion, urging me to break free, throwing back a light I didn't know I possessed. "Foolish child," the host shrieked, his glee flipping to fury. "You think you can resist? You are already bound." Waves of shadows surged forward, gaping mouths stretching impossibly wide, their insatiable reach clawing at me, pulling me backward toward the tidal wave of nightmares yet to come. I braced myself against the impending onslaught, locking my senses on the ground beneath me, willing it to ground me in my reality. Just as the tide was about to overtake me, a blinding flash exploded, A cosmic crack formed in the ether, revealing a myriad of distorted reflections, faces unknown yet disturbingly familiar. They were people I had loved. Figures tethered to me through remorse or regret, and stranded on the precipice of their own despair. "Help us!" they all cried, blending into the howling torment of uncertainty. The last vestiges of hope woven into the very tendrils that sought to engulf me. But within that confusing display of terror stood one face illuminated in desperation, the face of my brother. He reached through the shadows, his form flickering like a failing bulb, the agony of his passing etched deep within his features. "You have to choose." The thundering pulse of darkness clawed toward my essence, the crowd rising in a frenzy, but my brother's gaze anchored me, tethering my soul to the decision that loomed. I was caught between the inevitable pull of desperation and the beckoning remains of love I had thought lost, as another voice joined my brother's, echoing through the darkness, a child's voice, a specter of innocence. It sent electric pangs of grief into my heart, urging me toward the edge of self. My choice rippled through the void. Then I saw it, a glimpse of shimmering light beyond his grasp, forever unreachable, while shadows snarled and churned like a tempest at my back. As the figures lunged toward me, mouths curling into smiles that promised nothing but despair, the decision teetered on the brink. I felt the precipice call my name, straddling the line between salvation and damnation. "Help us!" they whispered, and not one, but all, pulled me forward into the depths, sealing my fate in that chilling final moment. And just like that, the darkness cracked open, swallowing everything, leaving nothing but a fading mirror beckoning to the next lost soul outside. I gasped. The path ahead, a perilous height of uncertainty, a cycle, perpetually unbroken. Curiosity clawed at me when I emerged into the genesis of the void, its expanse riddled with a hunger that felt familiar yet unimaginable. I blinked, my mind scrambling to grasp what I had just witnessed, desperate to process my brother's plea, the horrific vortex of souls spiraling into the depths. The oppression of despair hovered like a fog, and I instinctively stumbled backward, finding no salvation from its suffocating embrace. A sudden shift twisted the atmosphere. The air prickled, vibrating with an energy that was both electrifying and malevolent. Ghostly silhouettes morphed around me, gliding on the breaths of forgotten anguish, each mirroring the tormented faces I clung to inside my head. They whispered secrets in their discordant symphony, their words weaving tales of dread and nightmares contained within every glance. "Oh, you see them?" A woman's voice drifted like tendrils of smoke, cutting through my spiraling thoughts. I turned and found her standing just beyond my immediate grasp, her vague outline melding with the shadows. "They are the ones who came before you. They knew the truth but never managed to escape." Her face remained obscured, shimmering at the edges like a wisp of fog. "You were summoned to join their ranks, to witness eternity stripped of time." "Oh," I gasped, fear gathering at my throat, choking my breath. "I won't be like them." But her laughter, soft yet laced with the sorrow of 100 echoes, wrapped around me, making me shiver. "You already are. The darkness is a collector, you see, and now it collects your memories." Suddenly, sharp spikes of agony shot through my temples, and visions surged anew, assaulting my psyche. I abruptly stood on the precipice of my past. My childhood home flickered before me, drenched in sepia tones. I felt the warmth of sunlight that once streamed through the kitchen window, mingling with laughter. The sense of baking cookies enveloped me, companionable and soft, but like a runaway train, nostalgia twisted into torment. Shadows coiled around the edges of my memory, transforming that warmth into chilling resentment. In a heartbeat, I was no longer alone. Figures from my past emerged, elongated and distorted, their eyes wide with dull, mournful yearning. They crowded the edges of my recollections, beckoning with a sinister enticement that called forth living memories now twisted into grotesqueness. "Join us," they echoed, their chorus crescendoing into haunting desperation. "Find solace in darkness." "Stop," I screamed, forcing my hands against my ears. But the words sank deep into my skull, a serpentine whisper slithering through every crevice of my being. Light flickered, revealing scenes from that final day. A car's shattered glass, My brother's lifeless form crumpled in the street. I felt the agony burst anew, raw and unfettered, a well of torment springing forth, binding me to that irrevocable loss. The figures fused, their faces now indistinct, becoming bits of my regret and grief, feeding the depths of shadows swirling around me. "This is your fatito, live forever amidst your remorse," the woman murmured, and I realized she was no longer standing. She wove through the despairing tapestry of souls, knitting their anguish into a fabric that clung to me like a suffocating shroud. Then, through the cacophony of whispers, I caught something truly sinister. The laughter of the malevolent host broke through, echoing off the walls of despair. "You can't run, little wanderer. You are welcomed back into the fold, and it only gets better." Each word dripped with a glee that made my skin crawl, as though he basked in the radiant glow of my anguish. But I wouldn't yield. A smoldering defiance stirred within me, igniting the dim remnants of my will. "I am not yours," I spat, seeking the remnants of courage in the encroaching shadows. "Watch as they are lost." The woman sang in a deceptive lull, raising her arms as if conducting a bitter symphony. Around me, the figures writhed, stretching their fingers toward the chasm as if it called to them, flats of their palms tapering into fading trails of darkness. With each feeble grasp, "Join us," they templated again, a cacophony rising. Then one figure, closer than the rest, a girl, eyes wide with innocence, barely a reflection of the child I had left behind, screamed in desperation. "You forgot us." "Enough," I bellowed, my voice cracking through the layers of compliance woven into the darkness. It sent ripples across the void, freezing the echoes and silencing the frenzy that had threatened to engulf me. But it wasn't enough. Shadows surged. The figures rushed toward me, insatiable, eager to pull me under, their mouths gaping, insistently crying out for voices trapped inside them. And then, amidst the fray, one lone form rose from the shadows, breaking through the tempest. It was not familiar. Rather, it was a grotesque semblance of something defiant. A beast, a contorted figure twisted by hatred and longing, licking its lips with anticipation. It bore down on me, fearsome and powerfully absent of empathy. A horrid smile lifted its angular features, and from its gaping maw, a ring of hollow laughter erupted like thunder in the void. "Join us, O chosen one. You shall not resist." My freedom felt more ephemeral than ever, teetering on the brink of an abyss that promised to engulf everything I cherished. The weight of memories clawed at me, but still, I clung to the flicker of resoluteness in my soul, unwilling to fall into the depths beneath their call. Yet as I stood against the tide, impossibly grounding myself, a shocking roar ignited the void, reverberating around me. As I turned, the onslaught of figures grew unbearable, their cries harmonizing into a terrifying crescendo that threatened to spiral into the very heart of my being. And then, in the maelstrom of shadow, I saw it, an opening that hadn't been present before, a glimmering rift in the dark. What awaited on the other side? The moment froze, and I felt the presence of each lost soul reaching desperately for my hands, pleading with me to rescue them from the edges of despair. I was torn, the choice of light or darkness looming before me, as screams flooded my thoughts in a tidal wave of hollow echoes. "Help us, before it's too late." My heart raced against the heartbeat of the void, the decision fracturing into a million possible paths, each one leading into uncharted horror. With every second, the darkness threatened to pull me in, and I had to choose. But before I could step forth, I felt the lingering claws tighten around my throat, and just as the rift expanded, the beast lunged at me, its maw ready to swallow all hope in its fiery depths. And then, silence fell, a deafening pause, where every breath and heartbeat echoed in the gloom that I stood on the precipice, a choice unfolding like the agonizing shadow of dread surrounding me, the monster's breath hot against my skin, and the space between moments collapsed, plunging me into the maw of unending night. I had always thought nightmares were confined to sleep, that they could be repressed in the waking world. Yet here, staring at the void, I was acutely aware that they seeped into reality, burrowing their way into the marrow of my very existence. The silence that enveloped me felt, in itself, a gnawing weight that squeezed at my chest and bore into my consciousness, merging the fear of what had been with the horror of what could still become. As I stood at the rift's edge, fear clawed at the back of my mind with a wicked delight, whispering that no matter the choice, I would witness a horror worse than death. The abyss pulsed enticingly, almost sweetly, glimmering like the distant promise of a forgotten dream. I could feel the caress of lost souls at my back, their desperate pleas mingling in the air. Threads of their despair began to coil around my limbs, entwining me in their shared torment, aching to drag me down with them. The creature lurked like a shadow painted on shadow, its eyes glowing with the promise of pain and unending darkness. It shifted closer, jowls quivering as if tasting the very essence of my fear. "You think you might escape? How charming." Its voice dripped with malice, each word languishing against my skin like acid. "Stay back," I shrieked, recoiling from its reach. Yet the shadows closed in, and the figures behind me surged forward, their hands outstretched in haunting reverence and longing. "They want you. They need you. You can be like us." Images flooded my mind, dizzying and chaotic. I was visited by flickers of broken live streams I had once watched, where faces filled the screen lost in hysterics, gasping for breath, their wide eyes pleading for deliverance. And then, moments flickered, that moment when they were consumed by an unseen horror, vanishing before the live chat filled with confusion, comments frantically searching for answers. Where did they go? They begged into the void, their intonations echoing in my own mind now. Haunted, I blinked through the layers of shadow and light, exposed fragments of their screams merging with the whispers of the lost. I could feel their panic wrapping around me, urging me to fit myself into their tapestry of sorrow. "Don't let yourself be taken," their voices cried, a church of shadows joining me in my desperate struggle against despair. But the creature remained still, its sneer growing, teeth sharp and slick. "That little tendril of hope will be your undoing," it crooned, pawing the air. "The moment you comprehend this world is your new reality, is the moment you shall finally belong." It reached out, claws threateningly close, and this time fear blasted through me like a barbed arrow, burrowing deeper into the raw truth of my situation. And in that instant, the rift flickered, pulsating with an odd heartbeat, as if the void were alive. It resonated with my doubts, expanding and contracting in rhythm with my racing heart. And just then, as if born of the void itself, an apparition surfaced beyond the shimmering Gasha face I recognized. "My brother. Help me," he mouthed soundlessly, his essence flickering under a heavy cloud of shadows, the tear-streaked visage of someone lost yet familiar. I couldn't tell if it was real or a figment conjured by my fractured mind, another lie. "They won't let me go. Help us." "No," I shouted, feeling palpable desperation surge. The faces of the lost behind me merged into an agonized chorus of screams, intertwining with echoes of my childhood laughter, all merging into one driving force that urged me toward the rift. "I can't just abandon you." But the moment I took a tentative step forward, the beast seized the opportunity. It lunged, fangs bared, snapping just inches from my face. The sickening sound of its hunger echoed in the void, freezing my breath and momentarily paralyzing my resolve. I was trapped in a vortex of emotions, a dreadful concoction of wishful hope and haunting terror. The cries of my brother mingled with the wailing of the shadows as my body fought against the instinctual pull of survival. Behind me, the lost souls surged like a rogue wave, their desperate howls for freedom drowning out reason with chaotic urgency. "Don't let him take you," they cried in unison. "Join user, be consumed." Suddenly, the forest of shadow figures began to fragment, the shapes twisting grotesquely, as if they sensed that I wavered. One by one, they devolved into nightmarish forms, mouths yawning wide with infinity, drawing ever closer, hungry for my choice. My heart raced as I grappled with the choice before me, staring at the rift, at my brother, at the beast, and at the tide of shadows surrounding me. No, I won't be another ghost in this wretched place. But the moment I yielded to that defiance, all felt a powerful disruption, a shudder reverberating through the void. The rift trembled violently, and I felt something emerge, something ancient and far worse than the fragment of a brother I thought I'd rescue. Through the seething mass of darkness, a familiar voice emerged, echoing in its croon. You were chosen to witness. Now you cannot retreat. As the beast lunged again, the air grew heavy with despair, enveloping me in promises of murky damnation, the darkness feeding on a wave of undulating fear. And then, just as realization dawned, the shadows surged, flooding my thoughts, pulling me away from consciousness. The howl of my brother's voice faded into unrecognizable whispers, setting off an echoing collision of children's laughter buried beneath chaos, driving me to madness right before the shadows swallowed everything whole. That in that moment, the world spun away, dissolving into a tapestry of darkness dyed in blood. There was no escape, only the relentless heart of creeping dread, and reality flickered like an old film, leaving me gasping on the precipice of an unfathomable abyss, teetering on my very last shred of sanity. The void held its breath, thickening the air around me as the shout of despair morphed into a haunting silence, so profound that it echoed in my ears. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes, an audience to my unraveling. The shadows coiled tighter around my legs, insidious fingers gripping me like a vice, paralyzing, suffocating. In the yawning darkness, I sensed the creature's glee, its breath hot with anticipation. I turned slowly, my body woven into the tapestry of shadows that weaved through the rift. A thrill of panic knotted within my chest as I glimpsed the faces again, the lost souls now contorted into grotesque parodies of life, their mouths stretching wide to emit an anguished symphony that reverberated through the cavity of the void. They reached for me, their fingers threading through the darkness like tendrils of despair desperate for validation, beckoning me toward an irreversible fate. Help! Save us! Their voices intertwined, merging into a singular gnashing wail that pierced through the air, forcing me to shield my ears against the cacophony. Yet a dark part of me wanted to listen, to surrender to their deaths, their fate a twisted allure. What solace could I find in granting their wish? My foot slipped as the ground beneath began to shift, sliding like grains of sand spilling through a mental hourglass. I teetered on the edge of reality, the rift shimmering like a mirage, and the faces transformed, shifting into children, sweet, innocent children with wide eyes that gleamed with an unsettling light. We were playing, and now we can't find our way home. One whimpered, eyes glistening with tears that shimmered like the abyss. Their pleas cut deeper than any blade, and against my better judgment, I took a tentative step closer, a thin thread of hope unwinding through the despair. I can help you. I can. But the creature was faster, its body a blur as it lunged with a primal roar, thrumming with ancient malice. Its claws raked the air, the sound sharp as glass, forcing me to recoil in horror. You think mere children are worthy of your sacrifice? It spat, its voice rumbling like thunder before a storm. I could hardly breathe as fear started to coil around me like barbed wire. I could see my brother's face flicker in the back of my mind, a shadow of his former self, mouth agape, his silent pleas growing more desperate. Please, run now, sister. His visage gasped, dissolving in agony as his shadows transformed into writhing limbs, anxious to reach for me like beasts stalking prey. What is this place? I screamed, clenching my fists, stepping back, my heel crushing the slick ground. Before me, shadows danced and twisted, ink blots staining the horizon with wretched memories that bore a keen familiarity, yet tasted of an unprecedented terror, rooted in the present but mocking the past. This is not a place of salvation. It is a lens to your innermost horrors, the creature hissed, stepping forward. And you, oh dear, sweet, naive soul, are the one meant to bear witness. What you seek is simply a mirage, but what you'll find is revelatory. You are not here to save them, you are here to replace them. The truth struck like a lightning bolt, igniting my understanding. The thrum of fear coursed through my veins, igniting the primal instinct to flee. I twisted around, desperate to escape the mounting danger, but the encroaching tide of faces reformed, amping in terror, barreling toward me with ravenous hunger. Join us. You'll never be alone, they cried, their spectral fingers grasping at my sleeves, pulling me down once more. With every ounce of strength, I flung myself back, but the darkness reshaped itself into arms, claws snapping at my ankles and pulling me into a vortex of chaos. With a primal roar, I pulled free just as the lost souls faded into inconceivable shadows, a part of me aching from their abandonment. But the rift shimmered again, pulsating, and in that terrible instant, a solitary eye opened within its depths, and all-seeing, all-consuming gaze locked onto me, bearing an insidious promise. Screams echoed through the fabric of reality as I wrestled with the weight of dread. Yet I felt a pusha burrowing essence threading through my mind, forcing a terrifying vision into my consciousness. At the end of that vision, I saw myself, no longer a captive in this twisted game, but a harbinger of despair, my brother's face reflected in my own eyes, twisted and engulfed in shadows. No, I couldn't become them. My resolve wavered, and just when I thought I could escape, the rift surged with unbearable force, dragging me backward, deeper into its wretched embrace, as whispers of long-forgotten souls beckoned temptingly in the darkness. A jagged breath caught in my throat as I glimpsed figures breaking free from the rift's edges, pale dead eyes staring straight at me, faces twisted in silent screams of betrayal. And among them was my brother, his fingers clawing toward me, crying, "No, don't let it take you." The realization hit like a wave crashing against stone. I was losing myself along with the last fibers holding my sanity. Straining against the invisible forces, desperate, I leaned into the chaos as the abyss gaped wide, whispering secrets I had sworn I would never know. Suddenly, darkness enveloped me entirely, and within that haunting maze, I felt the maelstrom pulling me closer to a void that promised not only oblivion but the twisted echoes of my own becoming, spitting forth a prophecy of terror that clutched my heart. Then, just as a final cry of defiance shaped on my lips, the world fractured, collapsing into nothingness, and the weight of oblivion drew near. I was spiraling through the void, embraced by a darkness deeper than I had ever known. With no sense of up or down, time and space collapsed in on themselves, leaving me weightless in a sea of despair. My mind raced with thoughts of those I'd lost, their faces flickering in and out of memory like ghosts. I felt their presence, each one pulling at my essence, insistent and hungry as I drifted. I began to hear the whispers again, softer this time, almost tender, luring me further into the abyss. "Stay with us, stay," I tensed, the truth crashing into my senses with a stunning clarity. They were lost, yes, but they were not gone. They existed here, entwined in this nightmare. But it was not merely despair that thrived in the dark. It was a twisting hunger, a bottomless void craving new souls to fill its corners. I thought of the livestream, the promise of connection forged in chaos and fear, and understood then that my curiosity had awakened something far more sinister. I was not merely a viewer, but a vessel between worlds, siphoning the grief of those lost souls, those who had been plucked from their lives, just as my brother had been taken from me. I had been lured in, meant to join their chorus of despair, to become one among them. Just another face in the throng of silhouettes eagerly awaiting to feast on what little remnants of humanity remained. "Join us," they beckoned again. But this time, I felt the weight of choice resting upon me. I had to confront the truth that danced just beyond my fingertips, a reflection of my own fears and failures. As their whispers swayed around me, I reached deep within myself, recalling the warmth of my brother's laughter, memories yet to be claimed. In that moment, as I grasped those flickerings of light, a cord of defiance wove itself around my heart. "I will not succumb to your darkness," I cried out, not even recognizing my voice, a raw echo reverberating into the nothingness. The shadows bucked and twisted, recoiling at the declaration, as though my words had sparked something beneath the surface, though I had drawn attention to the specter tormenting me. But just as the shadows seethed in anger, the depths responded. The air shimmered, a tremor stirring like a predator roused to action. From the void coalesced a figure, darker than the night surrounding me, features flickering as it stepped closer, eyes caught in a kaleidoscope of despair. It was the host, towering above it all, grinning with a malicious glee that turned my insides to ice. "Ah, the brave little soul returns," he crooned, his voice a seductive snake. I saw the multitude of faces flicker behind him, trapped souls watching with their hollow eyes, mouths slightly parted as if waiting for something to slip between them. "He will, perhaps. You thought your defiance would save you? You'll soon see how the abyss had other plans. The shadows began to pulse with renewed fervor. Each breath I took seeding the air with their resentment's remnants of lives snuffed out too soon. I braced against their collective weight, realizing then that there was no escaping the inevitable. I had already crossed the threshold. This was my reality now, my new existence stitched together with threads of despair and reluctance woven too tightly. I didn't belong here but withheld every part of me. My identity, my memories, all teetered on the brink of extinction. The abyss beckoned with promises sweeter than any deception, and the host's laughter echoed like a siren song of suffering, driving me to the very edge. Suddenly, something shifted in the air, as if the void itself shuddered in anticipation. I felt Ida's sense of clarity intertwined with my heightened dread. My brother's face emerged from the shadows, eyes igniting with fierce determination. "Remember us," he shouted, his voice shattering the cacophony, igniting a long-dormant fire deep within my chest. In that moment, the truth swelled between us, a luminous strand of memory that sparked an insatiable will to remember every laugh, every tear, and every promise made in a life untainted by this fate. The shadows grew, restless, swirling violently, the existence of their own intensifying as they sensed their hold on my heart begin to fracture. I needed to fight back to reclaim what was stolen. No more, I screamed, standing firm against the tide. I choose to remember. With that command, a blaze of light uncoiled behind me, surging forth like a tidal wave, illuminating the darkness that had once threatened to consume my very essence. The host snarled, the shadows recoiling in abhorrence as the light pushed forward, illuminating their faces twisted in agony. Each soul I had lost emerged, forming a barrier at my back, their whispers rising to a crescendo. "We remember too." Their voices flooded the darkness. They filled me with courage, and I pressed forward as the confrontation erupted. I saw the portal again, alive and pulsating, ripe with potential. It shimmered like a distant star, expanded, and dimmed around its edges as flickers of ghastly memories tried to latch onto me. The host's grin faltered, fear creeping into his eyes. She was losing control. Couldn't comprehend that I had risen above the darkness. "Join us," he howled, but my resolve held steadfast as I surged toward the light. Instead of succumbing, I felt the cool touch of the void release me, freeing me from its clutches. The memories twisted and turned behind me, threatening to consume my very being. Yet I hung onto every bright flicker that surged from that radiant core. Just as I leaped into the portal, the entire void erupted in furious chaos, darkness rending with howls of anguish and outrage. "You cannot escape," the host bellowed, his voice layered in ultimate horror. But it was far too late. In that moment, the bridge shattered, and I was catapulted through the shimmering tapestry of light devoid of shadow and Pina, bittersweet promise of hope shimmering at the edges of reality that awaited me on the other side. As I surged forth into an expanse untarnished by memory, I heard one last haunting echo, a final plea echoing in the darkness, warning me of the cyclic horror that might still live beyond. "The void awaits, and it shall return to claim you." And as I fell into the bracing cold of fresh air, world illuminated, I understood everything just as chilling clarity dawned upon me. I had escaped, but the darkness still lingered. It would always be waiting, feeding on the edges of my soul. I turned to look at the screen behind me, the same live stream now broadcasting another soul entering the abyss, and my heart sank. With trembling hands, I shut it off, the silence now deafening. But the whisper came again, a chilling caress unfurling deep within me. "You can never truly escape." In that moment, I understood the cycle wasn't broken, it had merely paused, haunting me forever as the shadows lay in wait waiting for my return.